We go one-on-one with Sean Marks of the Brooklyn Nets. We'll go down all the James Harden stuff and the Kyrie stuff. The real issue today is, what do you lead with? So let's start with the obvious. Good afternoon, Evan. How are you today, kid?
I'm all right, pal. How are you?
I'm really in a fantastic mood today.
I like when you're in a fantastic mood.
Yes, I got a brand new sweatshirt on from the We Bleed Blue guys, and it fits. Sadly, it's a 2XL. I wish it wasn't.
Not surprised.
But I'm not going to lie to you. It is every bit a double XL sweatshirt. Maybe they run small.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's what I'm going to go with.
Tell yourself that.
So, Evan, we have three doors this afternoon for you to pick from. We have door number 1. We, of course, have door number 2. And then, quite frankly and quite obviously, we have door number 3.
Huh.
What door would you like to pick? It's up to you.
I'm partial to the number 3.
You like door number 3.
Someone you don't want to admit existed, but I'm partial to the Bambino, so I'm always a door 3 kind of guy.
Babe Ruth is a figment of people's imaginations.
Okay.
He's like Paul Bunyan.
Okay.
Yes. All right.
3. Tres.
All right, so let's open up slowly door number 3. There it is. Door number 3 is now open. And once again, here in New York, you should bow down to Brian Cashman.
I knew that was coming.
And here's why. Met fans right now, not all of them, not all, but there's a good percentage of Met fans right now, you can hear them, you can smell them, you can taste them, that are very upset that George Springer is not coming to Citi Field, where allegedly he wanted to go, closer to Connecticut and all that stuff. He instead is going to play for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, I want to make sure I got this part right, Evan. 6 years, how much was it?
$150 million.
6 years, $150 million.
Yes.
We'll get to the Met part of that in a second.
Yes.
Here's why today again, you bow down at the altar that is the statue of Brian Cashman. Right now, today, who's a better player, DJ LeMahieu or Springer?
DJ LeMahieu.
Thank you, sir. How much did Brian Cashman... That's great. Brian Cashman convinced DJ LeMahieu to come back to the Bronx for the same amount of years. 6 years.
Yes.
Springer got 6.
Yes.
LeMahieu got 6.
Correct.
Just out of curiosity, ballpark. Mm-hmm. What did Springer bat last year, regular season? I know it was a shortened year. You may not want to count it, but what did he bat?
Last year, I would guess like 270, 265, kind of in that range. Right around his career average, by the way.
And ballpark, what did DJ LeMahieu bat last year?
A lot higher than that.
Okay. How many? How?
That is not the one stat that you should use, but okay, for the sake of your point you're making, we'll go with it. Go ahead.
How much money did the machine agree to play for over the next 6 years?
What is $90 million?
So Brian Cashman got a better player today than Toronto got for $60 million less.
Yes.
That's why he's the greatest general manager in baseball. Now, flip it to the Mets. A lot of Met fans are upset. You're not one of them.
I'm not one of them. And look, things changed when they traded for Francisco Lindor. I think for a lot of us as Met fans, you wanted a move that showed you Steve Cohen is in town. He made that move. So once he trades for Francisco Lindor, here's my focus, Craig. It's not about stars. It's about building the roster that's going to win this year, but also looking long-term. And I like George Springer. I'm not going to sit here and downgrade him. I think the Toronto Blue Jays made a hell of a move. They had to overpay for George Springer. Teams have to do that sometimes. But for the Mets, if they sign George Springer to a 6-year, $150 million deal, are they able to sign Michael Conforto next year?
I thought the idea was that he's got more money than Moses. They can sign whoever they want.
No. See,
isn't that the idea that we're playing under?
Craig, that's not the idea.
Oh, okay.
The idea is
right.
He has a much larger budget than the Wilpons. And he does.
Yes.
The idea that the New York Mets were going to have no budget was a fallacy. The Yankees have a budget.
Yes.
They're a big market team. The Dodgers have a budget. They're a big market team. If you're going to give Francisco Lindor $300 million, which I fully endorse, if you're going to keep Michael Conforto, and I'll make this simple. Ask me, I think most Met fans, who would you rather sign long-term, George Springer or Michael Conforto? My answer is Michael Conforto.
Well, then it's a no-brainer.
And then you need bullpen help. I would still add another arm to this rotation. And so you need to make moves like that to win. This idea that the Mets needed to add a star, they already added a star.
Well, here's the optics of it, though.
They don't need to add another star.
There are optics, whether it's fair or not.
Optics, my ass.
Yes, here's the optics.
What?
The optics are, and I'm being objective about this.
Go ahead, and I'll tell you if I agree or not.
The optics are that Jeff Passan's a whiny little weasel, and I swear on everything holy, we will deal with him later today. All right, now.
Wow, okay.
He is a whiny little weasel. Nothing more, nothing less. Wah, shut up. All right, we'll get to him later.
Sure.
Here's the optics.
Yes.
The optics are that Met fans, again, I recognize not all.
I'm in the minority, by the way,
yes.
and I recognize that, but that's okay.
Met fans thought that they had an owner that was just going to spend. Maybe they shouldn't have thought that, but that's exactly what they thought. The optics are, boy, we were really high on this guy. The Mets apparently did make an offer somewhere less than $150 million.
Right.
They got outbid.
They did get outbid.
And that's supposed to be unacceptable.
Well,
because of the new owner.
Look,
that's supposed to be, that's not going to happen
There
to
are
us.
signings in baseball history where a team has to overspend, and you get why. I remember back to when Jason Worth was clearly overpaid by the Washington Nationals, but they had to do it. The Toronto Blue Jays have this great young core. They do. I was high on them last year. I'll be high on them this year. They need a little pitching, but that's a debate for another day. They needed to make that big move. And so they were going to overpay for George Springer. As very good, I don't want to say great, as very good as Springer is, I'm not giving him $160 million, especially if it's going to potentially cost me Michael Conforto or Noah Syndergaard.
That's why Met fans are upset.
Met fans,
because they don't think it should cost you any other player going forward.
That's not the way it works.
Hold on. That's why they're upset. Now, you might have an argument why they're wrong, but the reason they're upset is that they were under this faulty belief that they were never going to get outbid for a player.
That's not the majority of Met fans. I'm sure there are some.
I think it is.
I'm sure there are some that were under this belief that the Mets are going to have an $800 million payroll. That was never my belief. My belief was, hey, we've got a real big market team now. And when they really, really, really want and really, really need a player, they won't get outbid. They didn't really, really need George Springer.
Wait a minute. You've told me for 2 months how you need Springer because he's a major upgrade at center field over Nimmo.
That was prior to trading for an all-star shortstop.
He doesn't play center field. He plays shortstop.
You allot your budget differently. You have a lineup that features Lindor in it instead of Ahmed Rosario.
Yes.
You can live with Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field, who's all-world defensively. Things change, bro.
But you don't have him either.
Change. That's who I would want to sign. I mean, you're asking me, am I good with Brandon Nimmo being the opening day center fielder? Not really. I'd like someone who can defend out there.
Right.
But when you trade for a guy, would you agree Francisco Lindor is a significantly better offensive player than Ahmed Rosario?
It's not even debatable.
Okay.
Yes, of course.
Would you agree that when you look around at the Met lineup right now, it's a pretty damn good Met lineup? Dom Smith's going to be in it. Pete Alonso's going to be in it. Jeff McNeil, Francisco Lindor, Michael Conforto, J.D. Davis, even though Sandy doesn't love him. Would you agree that's a pretty good lineup?
You know that I do.
Okay.
Yes.
So improve your defense in center field.
Yeah.
If they didn't trade for Lindor, are we having a different discussion today? Of course we are.
Well, here's the problem.
Things changed, man.
They might want Jackie Bradley Jr., but they might get outbid for him.
Not at $150 million.
All I'm telling you is that.
And by the way, let me just say
here's
this.
what they proved.
Yeah.
They are not going over that luxury tax number. They're not.
Not yet.
He's going to sit right at 210 ballpark.
No, but Craig,
they are not willing to go over it. So the notion of what Met fans thought. Now, I want to be clear about this. There's two different aspects to this. There's you explaining why they're wrong, but it's what are they feeling?
Okay.
Met fans today feel, not all of them, a majority of them, and you're going to hear from a very loud majority is my guess. Met fans today are upset because they feel like I thought we were going to be the team that went out and got everybody we wanted.
They were never going to get
upset.
Everyone, but here's the argument I would make. And the Mets better do this, by the way, because if they don't, then I will criticize them. They need to sign Brad Hand. They can't lose out on Brad Hand to the Toronto Blue Jays or anyone else. Why, you ask? Because it's a great need to add not only another arm in the bullpen, but a left-handed arm out of their bullpen. And as you try to build a team that you hope wins a world championship, not freaking headlines, you need that. So I look at George Springer making $25 million a year, and I say to myself, if I can add Brad Hand at $11 million and Jackie Bradley Jr. at $7 million and Kiki Hernandez at $5 million, for the same amount I would have spent on George Springer, I'd argue with anybody I feel the Mets are a better baseball team.
All right, well, listen. Mets
it's not as sexy, Craig. I get that. But that makes them better. It fills multiple holes. And I'm not a hypocrite. What changed is the acquisition of Francisco Lindor. That's significant.
Okay, let me ask you
because they're
this.
going to have to pay him $300 million.
If you don't get Trevor Bauer now.
They're not getting Trevor Bauer.
Okay.
They're not getting Trevor Bauer.
So, as I remember, and I wrote this down, Big Mac and I went over it before the show.
Yes.
You guys had a wish list.
Yes.
And I remember someone going, we better get 2 out of 3 of these guys.
Dude.
One's not enough.
No. Hold on. Hold on a second.
Evan, I wrote
what
it down.
I said
Look,
was.
Where is it?
I said.
I wrote it down right there. See that?
I see that.
In that invisible ink? I wrote it down, and you said to me.
No.
You said on December 7th, on December 12th, on December 18th, and on January 6th.
Right.
We better get 2 out of 3. So now you're sitting there, you got outbid by a team in Canada.
Why did I text you on a Saturday to say they need to sign?
Which day was Saturday?
December 12th.
Because you wanted to talk to me.
That's what I did?
That's right.
Everything I said they needed, and I think a lot of Met fans agree with this, they needed one big acquisition at minimum to show they were for real. That one is a shortstop they traded for.
Yes.
They also, in that deal,
Which,
acquired.
to be fair, nobody saw coming.
Right. They also acquired a really solid middle-of-the-rotation arm in that deal. If you think everything's the same as prior to the Lindor trade, then I don't know what to tell you.
Here's what I know. I know the Yankee GM outfoxed everybody in baseball. I know that the New York Mets have some problems because of the Porter stuff, but I also want to be clear. The New York Mets were not distracted by the Jared Porter decision.
No, they didn't want to spend $150.
Right. They did not think that Springer was worth 6 years at $25 million per.
Do you think 6 years? And I think he's an amazing postseason player. Incarcerated Bob brought up an old tweet I had to say George Springer is a playoff juggernaut. Of course I tweeted that. It's true. I don't walk away from that. Thank you for finding that old tweet, by the way. Is he worth 6 years, $150?
Only if you think he is.
Well, and let me get back to something you said about Cashman, where he does deserve credit.
Yeah, he's the greatest GM in the history of baseball.
Okay, calm down.
Proves it again and again and again. And I happen to like Sandy Alderson a great deal.
Right.
Brian Cashman, he's also played with a different budget. Brian Cashman's the greatest GM. He got a better player for $60 million less.
Right. And
Genius.
a big part of why that happened was all you need is one bidder. You had the Toronto Blue Jays and the New York Mets going toe-to-toe for George Springer. We went over what DJ was offered.
Excuse me?
The best offer DJ got from the Toronto Blue Jays was not $150 million.
Here's the difference.
Go ahead.
The Blue Jays and the Mets were both going after Springer.
Yes.
The Blue Jays got him. The Blue Jays and the Yankees were both going after LeMahieu. The Yankees got him. And that's a fundamental difference between the two franchises.
The fundamental difference in this specific case is how much that particular player was needed. The Yankees needed to re-sign DJ LeMahieu. George Springer was going to be a luxury. Like, I'm not going to argue that adding George Springer wouldn't have made their lineup better. Of course it would have. It would have created questions about the future of Conforto and Syndergaard and Lindor, but George Springer was becoming a luxury. DJ LeMahieu was a necessity. And that's the difference. And you know that.
Do you want to know what was behind door number 1 and 2, which you didn't pick, just out of curiosity?
Of course.
All right. Behind door number 2. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Door number 2. There are rumors afoot from irreputable sources that the New York Jets have reached out to the Houston Texans to ask them 2 questions. Question number 1, are you really going to trade him? Question number 2, give me an idea of what you want. You didn't pick door number 2. I'm just saying you didn't pick it. You could have picked it.
Right.
You didn't pick it.
Right.
Door number 1.
Can I guess what door number 1 is?
If you want to guess what door number 1 is, go right ahead. Go ahead.
I'm going to guess it has something to do with a baseball writer. A baseball writer that you're not a fan of anymore. I don't know if you ever were a fan. I'm going to guess that's door number 1. Am I correct?
Yes, you are.
Oh, good. Okay.
Because a week ago, I'd never even heard of Jeff Passan.
Come on.
I didn't know who he was.
Really?
I'd never heard his name
Let's
before.
go.
Now he's public enemy number 1. And that's a bad spot for him to be in. That whiny little weasel. That's all. That's all. Because if you cared so much about the victim, you wouldn't, or your team wouldn't have reached out to her to let her know that Porter got the GM job because you're so eager to break this story. And that's what happened. She didn't call them up and say, oh, I heard Porter got the job. Let's go with the story. They called her. They brought her back in to her worst nightmare, having to deal with the reality of her stalker. So let's not act like they give a rat's ass about the victim, because they don't. Now, real quick, before we take your phone calls, this is from a non-weasel, my main man, John Heyman. John Heyman's the GOAT.
You love Jay
I like John Heyman, because John Heyman's the GOAT. Heyman tells you when he doesn't know something. Don't make it up.
By the way, John Heyman, another person who people say Joe and I made famous. But go ahead. Go on.
Not the case. Here's the deal.
Yes.
The Toronto Blue Jays have made an offer to Brad Hand.
Yeah. Mets can't lose out on Brad Hand. Oh, of course they. And the Blue Jays should make an offer to Brad Hand. He's a damn good reliever, and they need him, but so do the Mets. The Mets have to walk away. They have to finish off this offseason strong. And here's exactly what they've got to do.
I know
they have to sign an elite-level reliever. In my opinion, Brad Hand qualifies. They need to add a top-level glove in center field. In my opinion, Jackie Bradley Jr. qualifies. And at minimum, they need to add another piece of rotation depth. None of that is sexy, bro, but you know what it is? It's essential, because my focus right now, and this is a cool world to live in because I have this same focus with the basketball team I'm rooting for. The focus is a championship. The focus is not headlines. The focus is not sexy. The focus is not, this is a big move. It shows Steve Cohen's legit. That was Lindor. The focus is a championship. That's on my mind. That should be on Met fans' minds. And Bradley Jefferson Hand, not trying to act like he's, the world's greatest reliever of all time. For some reason, Norm Charlton jumped into mind. I don't know why. But that's the kind of move that moves you into a place that's closer to building that kind of championship team. So if you tell me today that the Mets lost out on Brad Hand, you're damn right I'll be disappointed.
By the way, getting Lindor is not about Steve Cohen. Spending money is about Steve Cohen. It's extending Lindor.
Of course.
Is about Cohen.
That's connected.
Getting Lindor is about Sandy Alderson and maybe a little bit of Jared Porter when he was
here. Are they going
to
extend Lindor?
They're going to try their
damnedest.
Are
they going to extend Lindor in your opinion?
I don't know.
You told me after they made the trade, it's a lock they're going to sign him long term.
I also never thought they'd be outbid by the Toronto Blue Jays.
Here we go.
But they were. It's an embarrassing day for New York Met fans. The Toronto Blue Jays. And by the way, in allowing Springer to go to Toronto, all you did was not only weaken your own team, you screwed the Yankees. That's what you did.
Well, that's not the Mets' job to worry about the state of the American League East.
Screw the Yankees. Okay. We all know what's going on here. The division between Yankee fans and Met fans has never been wider.
Well, let me say this about the Yankees, by the way.
Yankee fans like myself.
And this is not a knock on Hal Steinbrenner, but this is the reality. There was a report, it turned out to be erroneous, that Michael Brantley, who you've heard me talk about, I brought it up to Cashman, said at point blank, what do you think of Michael Brantley? You should sign the guy. If you don't want Michael Brantley signing with the Toronto Blue Jays, which that's what the rumor was, I got this crazy idea. The New York Yankees should sign Michael Brantley.
Well,
why not?
We're going to tell
them. Go sign him. They couldn't use another left-handed bat. A left-handed bat? Sign Michael Brantley.
We're going to tell your phone calls. 3 o'clock, Sean Marks will join us. Later today, of course, we got the New York Jets apparently talking to the Houston Texans. That is an unconfirmed rumor, but it's out there. It's got legs. And an old friend of mine is going to stop by the show today to be the first legitimate celebrity to play our game 2 for 1. One guest, 2 questions. Do you want me to tell you who it is or no?
I'm kind of curious, of course.
Yes, I will tell you who it is right after this. 877-337-6666. That's the number to join the show. It's Carton Roberts on the Fan. We got a great afternoon planned for you. And if you woke up with a little snow on the ground, a little reminder, you're living in Yankee Town. That's right.